Charmian Proskauer is on the board of the Massachusetts CFS ME and FM Association. A quick explanation: that stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis, which you may also know as chronic fatigue syndrome. This is a disease that really steals lives, takes them away, and leaves its sufferers under glass, living but not living, not enjoying, constantly tired, suffering pain, unable to function. One sufferer told me it's like having an automobile where there's no gas in the tank. And they live for years and years in this state of not being part of the world in which they are. It is very tough, obviously, on the sufferers, and even tougher, maybe, on those who look after them year in and year out, the caregivers. All this comes into a terrible reality during the coronavirus outbreak, because these people who have lived in isolation for so long are now, if anything, more isolated. Charmian, you have a program of reaching out to sufferers, and that using technology, using Zoom to assist them. How is that going?
Yes, that's true. We have been using this opportunity to reach out to our patients, our members and friends, because everyone is isolated right now. And it's even, although most of our ME/CFS patients live a very isolated and homebound life anyway, it's even harder now because everyone is that way. So we have been making an effort to reach out to people just to see how they're doing and to talk to them.
And how many people have you been able to reach?
We've done a series of Zoom meetings for folks, and we've had about 20 people at each of 5 meetings, so about 100 people so far, and we're probably going to do at least a couple more meetings, and then those are just general meetings to explain about our association and get acquainted with people and have them get better acquainted with us. But we are also starting up several online support groups so that groups of 10 to 15 people can meet weekly or bi-weekly and just have a chance to talk to each other on a more continuing basis about how they're doing and how they're feeling.
Now, your association is headquartered in Boston, or your chapter is in Boston. How far afield do you go? If somebody in San Francisco wants to talk to you on Zoom, can they do that?
That would be fine, absolutely fine. We've sent out the invitation to everyone on our newsletter list, and although we confine our patient services primarily to Massachusetts and a little bit in the surrounding New England states, the online groups, we had people already from Minnesota, from Florida, from California on the online groups. We have about 2,000 people on our newsletter list, and only about half of them are actually in Massachusetts. Another 20% are from other states in the US, and about 30% actually are international.
How do people contact you? Let's put that up on the screen right now.
Our website is www.massmecfs.org. And there's a contact us link, and people can contact us that way. That's really the best way. And there's also sign up for our newsletter right on the homepage, and people can sign up, and then they'll be sure to get any announcements of anything that we're going to be doing.
Aside from the immediate need to try to end some of the isolation or ameliorate it, long term, are we making progress towards a a solution to this disease, this horrible, terrible, confining, life-stealing disease?
Well, I am actually guardedly optimistic for a couple of reasons. One is that there is quite a bit more research going on now, and we're very fortunate here in Massachusetts to have a new research collaborative which has started up at the Harvard hospitals, led by Dr. Ron Tompkins. And he's got a large number of researchers interested in ME/CFS. Right now, during the coronavirus pandemic, only essential research, which is mostly coronavirus research, is happening now. So some of our research projects are on hold for the moment, but I'm sure they will start up again. And there's so much work in so many different fields going on. I feel like progress is going to be made. The other reason I'm optimistic is kind of a sad reason, and it has to do with the coronavirus. ME/CFS is, for the large majority of people, follows a viral infection. And we know that many different viral infections can trigger the development later of ME/CFS. So we are expecting, but of course not certain, that many people who have COVID-19 may not fully recover and may actually develop symptoms that are like ME/CFS. And if that's the case, then there's going to be probably, I would say, just a wild guess, triple the number of patients in the country that we see today, if that actually happens. So then I think the disease and research in the disease will get even more attention.
Let me just spell out for our listeners and viewers again. Myalgic encephalomyelitis is the disease also known as chronic fatigue syndrome, and it's very debilitating. If you get it, there is not much hope of a cure and very little hope that you will live a normal life. Instead, you will be confined sometimes to bed, always to a secondary row, always to fearing that if you put out too much effort, you'll pay a terrible price and have to go back to bed.
Right, and many different symptoms that wax and wane and come and go in various levels of severity, debilitating fatigue, lightheadedness, unrestful sleep, cognitive problems, and something called post-exertional malaise, which people may not recognize at first because after doing any kind of activity, there can be an exacerbation of any of the symptoms, but that might not happen for a day, 2 days after the activity. And the activity can be something as simple as washing the supper dishes.
That's right. I have friends. I've been working in this field for quite some time. I've written about it and broadcast about it. And I know people who, after something as simple as going out to dinner, may a day later have to retire to their beds for 2 days. One person in particular I've seen seemed to be very energetic and yet pay a terrible price in 2 or 3 days in bed afterwards. Some patients, of course, are in bed for years. Others cannot tolerate sound or light. Those are the extreme. How many of the extreme do you think there are, Charmian?
How many what?
Of patients with extreme symptoms, extreme debilitation.
Well, we think at least 25% of the patients, and there are estimated to be well over 1 million patients in the United States right now, and there could be many, many more than that, but that's a common estimate, 1 to 2.5 million people. And of those, 25% are probably bedbound or completely homebound, and 75% of the patients cannot work, at least can't work full time. So that's a large degree of debilitation.
And there's stigma attached to this disease, is there not?
Well, there is, because there's no biomarker, there's no test that you can do that says that you have this disease. So it's something that's diagnosed only by the symptoms that you have and ruling out other diseases. And because the symptoms vary so much from person to person, a lot of doctors are not very familiar with it, and they don't get to study it in medical school, so they may not know about it. And their doctors may feel like they're hypochondriacs, or it's all in their head, or not believe them. This of course is the worst kind of reaction to get from one's healthcare provider, especially when one is very debilitated and feeling so sick.
Do you think that people are worse off during this pandemic when we're shut away? Those who are truly shut away, how are they managing to get food, to have anybody to care for them, to bring things to them? Is there some sort of emergency network operating?
People are managing as best they can. Many have caretakers already, and some of those are able to continue taking care of them. Others are doing it more remotely, perhaps leaving food at the door. The lucky people have a family member who can help them, and the unlucky people are living on their own and finding it very difficult. I've been working with a patient over the last few days. We're trying to get meals delivered to her, and there's no way right now that you can get Meals on Wheels. There's just so much demand for remote delivery. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to succeed, but we're working on it with her.
How many organizations like yours are there? Are there chapters or branches of your organization in other cities that people can turn to?
Unfortunately, not so many. We are not a chapter of any national organization. We're just an independent organization in Massachusetts. There is the National ME-CFS and ME or ME and CFS Society, but it's a very small group. There are other national organizations that focus on other things like supporting research or doing advocacy, but they don't, and they do help patients some, but they aren't really organized to serve patients in a region. I do belong to a group called the U.S. Action Working Group, which is a collection of patients and advocates across the country. And right now we have people from 25 or 26 different states working as part of this group. And many of them are starting up groups like ours in other states. So that's a nice thing to see.
I know from my reporting that this is a disease that has been starved of research funding. It simply hasn't been high on anybody's priority list, especially the government. Do you think this will all improve because of coronavirus? There'll be a greater interest in viruses in general and into this kind of remote but nonetheless critical debilitation.
We're certainly hoping so. The funding has been as low as $5 million a year, which is hardly anything at all. It's now up to around $15 million a year.
That's government funding.
That's federal funding, right? Yeah. Right. And advocates and patients are actually having a series of meetings with congressional representatives today. All states except 2 or 3 are having meetings with their congressional delegations. And one of the things we're asking for is to raise the funding to $60 million as part of the new CARES bill. So we'll see if we get anything with that. But we desperately need more money.
Well,
private funders are also raising money.
5 million is very small in government terms. That's hardly a clearing of the throat when it comes to government expenditure. Do you think you made the case sufficiently strongly to go towards or to reach 60 million?
We certainly hope so. I think the possibility that there may be many, many more patients with showing ME symptoms in the future as a result of the COVID COVID-19 pandemic may get congressional attention. It's going to take congressional pressure because the NIH is under so much pressure anyway for all their research funds.
We tend to say in this, I've been covering it for a long time, feel quite close to the community, and therefore sometimes myself tend to say, thank you for all you do. How long have you been doing all you do, Charmian?
I've been actively involved for 12 years now. I started in 2008 because my husband is a patient and has been for a long time. And I wanted to do something to help the situation. So I've been, as a volunteer, practically a full-time volunteer for almost that long.
And your husband is a pediatrician himself.
He's actually a child psychiatrist, now retired.
And so he's been able to treat children who have this disease. I tend, I suppose, along with a lot of other people, to think of it as a grown-up's disease, but it's not, is it? It's not exclusively.
He did, and there are children with the disease, not so many as there are adults, of course, and they present a little bit differently, but they're very debilitated, and we have parents in our association who have one or two or more children who have the disease, and their education is disrupted, their social development is disrupted, and it's very hard for the families. So they certainly need support as well.
I have seen and photographed, you can't interview him, one young man in his early 20s in California who is unable to communicate with the world at all except through a sensor on his fingers. It takes his parents tremendous effort to keep him going. There are others like that. I heard of a young man who is in a closet because he can't take light or sound. And I have seen a pathetic young woman who was propped up in a wheelchair for me to interview her. These are the extreme cases, but they tear at the heart, and they must be suffering more today when there is no communication of the normal sort. Nobody can stop by and say hello. These little things that keep them going. So I think your Zoom must be awfully important to them, Charmian.
Well, the most severely ill patients, like those you described, really can't communicate at all. And even for moderately affected patients, looking at a screen and focusing on a screen for 30 to 45 minutes can be exhausting. But we do have people who are able to participate while they're lying down in bed, propped up by pillows perhaps, and so they can do it while they're resting. And so software like Zoom that allows people to get together remotely has been a wonderful boon for those people who can handle it because they don't have to go anywhere. And so it saves a lot of energy.
Charmian, as I said, they say in the community, thank you for all you do, and thank you for coming on our broadcast today and telling us about this critical, although often ignored, disease.
Thank you, Llewellyn.
We're going to put up on the screen once more a note of how to reach you, and for radio listeners, you might repeat that again.
It's www.mass for Massachusetts, MASS, ME for myalgic encephalomyelitis, CFS for chronic fatigue syndrome.org. massmecfs.org.
Charmian, good luck. Cheers.
Thank you, Llewellyn.